So I invite you to step into the beauty of prayer with me. Simply relax. Celebrate this moment. Ah. As we come together, infinite spiritual power unfolds as each one of us. Sweet, sweet Spirit, infinite presence, source of all that is right here, right now, abounding with confidence, with inspiration, with love. In my mind's eye, I look around. I take in the wonder of this earth, of nature, of my home. Each of us spins in infinity. Each of us channeling source, infinite possibility. I know I am one with divine mind, one with the creative energy of life. Each breath welcomes new beginnings. The universe is opening up for each of us as we step through into greater possibility. The universe is biased in our favor. I know each of us is available to the universe. I choose to be an active participant in this speck of time that I call my life. We are each a co-creator of our experiences. The power of creation lies in what we believe. I feel divine energy flowing effortlessly as confidence, inspiration, love. I accept all this as natural. All good shows up for each of us as each of us. I know that as an expression of life, each of us is energized by the same power that spins the stars in the sky. We are each a powerful being, deserving of all of the bounty of the universe. And so I know the words spoken today breed confidence. The music inspires, and our community is rich with love. I am in deep gratitude for our coming together, each of us manifesting spiritual power. Yes, spiritual power come to life, opening up as channels of divine good. I release this into the spiritual law which expresses naturally and eternally. The life principle manifests as me, as us, in every moment. And as I release this, I know we can say, and so it is. Oh, it is. So let us rest in 2 minutes of contemplation.
You know, a lot of people following COVID were wanting, let's get back to normal. Let's get back to the way it used to be. And I think we're all realizing that we're never going back to the way it used to be. Everything's different and everything is new. And so do we get to play with that? Do we get to, and literally play with that concept? Do we get to create the new? Guess what? We're a choice for how we want to experience that, yes? So we get to create, and that's what we're going to talk about today is the creative process of how do we do that, first in mind and then in form. Yes? Okay? Because that's how it all starts. So this whole month we're talking about core concepts. And we've talked about oneness to start with because everything is one. Without that understanding, then we're kind of a bunch of isolated little beings trying to figure it all out. Yes? Okay? But everything is one. And that's both the good news and sometimes for some of us the bad news. Because I look at Craig, for instance, who I really don't like at all. And I have to say, oh no, but he's part of the one too. I love Craig. He knows that. And so we forget sometimes. And so that's why we come to a place like this, is to remember, yes? So today we're going to be looking at the creative process. Some of you have seen this before. Some of you have seen this multiple times before. I just did a workshop on it 2 months ago before. But it's good to remember it. For some of you, this will be brand new too. Yes? So we play with what this is. So we have oneness. And then within that oneness is what we call the law, which is what I put out comes back to me, yeah? That's the simple, the law. As I give, I receive. The kids at the fun fair, they set up a little booth where there's little envelopes, and you can leave a message and take a message. You can leave a message for a kid who's going to come later on. Write out a little, something nice to them, and then put it in an envelope, and then you spin a wheel, and it gives you the color of another envelope, and you pick out a message that was already written by somebody else and take it. What we give comes back to us, but not necessarily from the same place. That's the law. Okay, so we get to play in that. So the creative process is how we apply the law, how we enact the law, how we live it. And so we're going to play with this today, but remembering that as we go through this, all of it is aspects of the oneness. Ernest Holmes says there's no, my mind and your mind. He also says there's no objective mind, subjective mind that are separate from each other. These are just aspects of the one mind. The one mind. I know we all like to say, or think, we kind of get oriented around ourselves that we're it, and I'm here as an isolated little being, and my mind, and all that stuff, but it's really, we're just using the one mind. Another way to say it might be that the one mind is using us. It's kind of a reciprocal process. It's a dance, yes? Okay? So we know the principle of the oneness. We know the principle of it, okay? And now we're going to realize it in the individual, which is us. That's you, right? The person in your socks, right? Is everybody wearing socks? No, Buffy's not wearing socks. Or shoes. Or whatever. Okay? Because we are enactors of the principle. The principle doesn't do us any good if it just sits out there as a principle, yes? We can know all about the principle of electricity, yeah? But until we plug something in, until we harness that principle for use, it does us no good. The principle of electricity existed, for billions of years prior to us ever being here, right? But, I've been reading Julian of Norwich, 13th century mystic, could not plug in a toaster and get toast in the morning because there was no electricity that was available for use. Okay? So this process we're talking about, the creative process, is how to make this infinite power, this infinite presence, this infinite love, this infinite good available for use for us. Do we want that? Okay? Yes. So we are enactors of this principle either consciously or unconsciously. Most of the time, and most people in the world are unconsciously enacting it. Take a breath. And so we can look at manifesting from the principle, but until we learn to use it, nothing happens. So we'll explore it and learn how to apply the creative process. So Sam is going to walk us through some slides. And so we're going to start with the ideal, the spiritual plane, because everything starts on the spiritual plane, yes? And so there's a list of qualities up there. Abundance, beauty, freedom, harmony, joy, all that stuff. There's what we might call God qualities, divine qualities. It's the highest quality, right? It hasn't individualized yet. So it's just pure beauty. You and I might have different ideas of what beauty is or how to express that, but we can all agree on the beauty is a good thing, yes? Okay. Yeah? Okay. So it moves into the spiritual plane, and that's the level of the ideal. The ideal of everything. And then from there, let's do the next slide. It moves down a little bit then to the mental plane. And we should see some intuition in there, Sam, if you can do one more. There we go. And so the way that we move from the spiritual plane is by listening to our intuition, by listening to that infinite nature as an individual within our mind. And so it moves into the mental plane. By the way, you're going to recognize this as the teaching symbol that we have there. It's a little bit more broken out and a little more kind of itemized. Thank you, Buffy. Yes. So we move into the mental plane with ideas. So we start to get an idea about the ideal. Yes? Let's go one more idea. And then while we're in the mental plane, we get this wonderful idea and we encounter one more. Mental blocks. Now, you guys don't have any, I know. It's just been swept away and cleared out. But we have mental blocks. We have old beliefs. We have stinking thinking, yes? That says, oh, who am I to do that? You know, one of our most core beliefs is, I'm not good enough. Anybody besides me? You? Okay, yeah. I can say that we all have that at some level of our existence. And so those are mental blocks that start to block the flow of it. Without those blocks, everything flows perfectly. And so from the mental plane, then it flows down into the emotional plane. This is where we feel it. Yes? This is why I ask us when we're singing to get our body involved, because our body is what feels. Everything else sits up here. Yep. This is why we teach Qigong with Kent. This is why we do Tai Chi. This is why we do any kind of motion. You know, I can have the ideal of chocolate cake. But until I take an action and an emotion, have an emotional interaction with it, I don't get to experience chocolate cake, yes? Energy and motion. So, but of course, just like in the mental plane, in the emotional plane, there are, well, we move from the mental with imagination, and take one more for me, Sam. Inspiration, there we go. And so, in the mental plane, we get an idea of the ideal. How do I want that to show up? If I want beauty to show up, I can say, you know, what I interpret as beauty is a rose. The flower, a rose, right? And so I can sit there and go, that's my idea of it. And I start to get my imagination involved. Image nation, right? It's my nation of imagery. It's where I can start to see it and image it. And I get that involved. And then I get inspiration. So I can start to see, oh, I could have a rose garden. I could plant a rose bush or a rose garden or whatever, depending on how big I want to go. We'll talk about that next week. And we get inspired. Inspiration comes in the emotional level. We feel inspiration, yes? Okay. And of course, just like above, we get into emotional conflicts. Those are those little arrows with the flames shooting out or the whatever around them, right? We get emotional conflicts. Mental blocks lead to emotional conflict. Because on one side, I want this, but I have this block that says I can't do this, and so I feel, you can look that up in the dictionary. Yeah. And so we feel that emotional conflict. And oftentimes people say, I'm conflicted, and it's because they've got a belief system, a belief that's holding them back from what they really want to do. I really want this, but I don't believe I can. I don't believe I should. What will people think? All this sort of stuff. And so then I feel conflicted. Take a breath. Letting go of the blocks and that, we move to the next level, which is where from the emotional level and with inspiration, keep going, Sam, one more, we take action. We do something, yes? I plant a rose bush. I take some sort of an action, and it shows up in the physical plane, keep going, Sam, as experience in the world. It shows up in form. It's the nature of the divine to want to show up in form. How do I know that? Look around. Because it does, right? We got a whole universe of stars and planets and galaxies and people and animals and rocks and trees and birds, yes? It shows up in form. We get birds that fly into my window. That bird is still flying into my window. I put up little stickers on it, and it still goes above the stickers and flies into. Anyway, that bird has taken the definition of bird brain to a new low level. I'm sure it's proud of itself. I'm sure it's an embarrassment to the rest of its community. But anyways, it shows up in physical plane as an experience in the world. And this is what we're really looking for. When we want love, we don't want it as a nice cosmic idea, right? We want to experience love in some way or another. If we want joy, we want to experience it in some way or another. We want it in form. The universe, the infinite, wants it in form through us. We are conscious co-creators with the infinite of our experience, of life itself, of all these ideal qualities. It's almost like it says, wow, how many billions of ways can I manifest beauty and love and joy and abundance and all this stuff? And we're the answer. We're the answer. So, but it doesn't stop there, does it? Let's take the next slide. So we start to, once we have that experience, we start, in the world, we start to have a reaction. We have an experience, we have a reaction. Yes? It can be, I feel really good, I can feel really not good, okay? But I have a reaction to it. I plant the rose garden, I look at the rose garden and go, wow. Or I look at the dead rose garden and go, oh. You know, whatever it is, I have a reaction. And then from there, I move up and I get feeling. That's part of my reaction. I have a feeling about this. Back up into the emotional plane, yes? Okay? And so we move from there to cognition, which is meaning making. So if I plant a rose garden and it dies, I can make all sorts of meanings up, yes? I kill plants. I have a brown thumb. I'm the kind of person who. That soil is not good soil for roses, which is different than I'm the kind of person who kill, okay? We can make all sorts of meanings up, right? You know, I kill relationships. And so I can make all sorts of meanings up about that. I can make them up about me, I can make them up about them, I can make them up about the whole process in general, I can make up meanings. It's where we have cognition, we make a meaning. And then from there, we move one more up and we gain knowledge. In the mental plane, we gain knowledge, we gain information, right? So if I plant the rose garden, I'm going to take back that affirmation that I just made that I kill relationships. I used to kill relationships. I have killed some relationships. Pardon me? And I'm going to change it to I nurture relationships. Thank you. Knowledge. So we gain knowledge. And then we gain recognition. We start to recognize, oh, this relates to something else deeper that's going on for me. And I recognize it. And from there I move into one more, wisdom. Wisdom is when the heart and the head come together in gaining great wisdom. And so this is the creative process. We're always enacting this. You're doing it right now. We do it all day long, every day of our lives. In some level, we are enacting this. Now here's the thing. Most people in our culture were trained to never rise above the mental plane. And when we never rise above the mental plane, we circulate old ideas, we get more knowledge, we circulate old ideas, we get more knowledge, we circulate old ideas, we get more knowledge, but we never tap into that high plane that is the ideal of what we want and that is the realm of true wisdom for moving forward. And so this is one of the reasons why we do practices like visioning. The first two steps of treatment are God is, and then I am. I recognize my oneness with this infinite presence, with this highest quality that I can think of, is to lift ourselves up to that higher level and let that be the source of what starts the flow. Otherwise, I'm just circulating old ideas. They may work, they may not work. We find ourselves in the same old relationships, jobs, homes, situations over and over again until we lift up. You know, one of my mentor was just, and I were just talking this past week, and it's like only God can heal at the level that needs healing. You know, and that sounds a little kind of religious, but it's only that infinite presence can truly heal, has the power to heal. It's only when we tap into that. I can't figure it out, because if I had figured it out, guess what? I would have by now. 12-step has a lovely saying that's, my best thinking got me here, which usually is in a very low place in life. And that's when we don't rise above the mental plane. So this is the creative process. Ernest Holmes talks about, he says, this chart shows the universe as a trinity of being. The upper section designates those attributes of spirit which are self-conscious. So that's that spiritual plane, our self, capital S, self-conscious. It is aware of itself. The middle section shows the subconscious aspect of the law, which is where this starts to happen, this starts to move, and we run into what's unconscious to help to make it conscious, yes? Okay. And then the lower section shows the effect of spirit working in the medium of universal mind, the effect being the form. So one of my favorite things is when something shows up in my life that I don't like is I ask the question, the universe always says yes, so what did I actually ask it to say yes to? What did I unconsciously and not being aware of really ask it to say yes to? Right? What is that belief? What is that mental block that is sitting there that's creating this result? And then Ernest goes on to say, the point that's drawn through the center symbolizes the descent of spirit into matter or form. It is necessary that spirit be manifested in order to express itself. So when we manifest, especially when we manifest from spirit, we are expressing what spirit wants to express, right? You couldn't have the desire that you have if it wasn't the infinite desiring it through and as you. Yes? You couldn't have the desires that you have unless it was spirit having that desire to express it through you. Where we get into trouble is on the mental blocks where, my good has to come at the expense of somebody else's good. That's not really spirit. Because spirit is a oneness, remember? Good for one thing should be good for all. I love it when I watch spiritual mind treatments manifest. When people start to get it, it's a win-win-win-win-win all over the board for the process. If it comes as I win, you lose, then it's not really spirit. We're not really in alignment with the highest and best of spirit. So spirit creates also by contemplation and vision. Contemplation and vision. The Greek philosopher Plotinus said, I do not argue, I contemplate. And as I contemplate, I let fall the seeds of thought into the mirror of mind, which then becomes the mirror of matter. As I contemplate, rather than trying to force this to happen, I remember years ago I was sitting here contemplating this, and I heard a little voice inside say, love what you want into existence. Love what you want into existence. Not force it into existence, right? Love it in. So I contemplate it. I contemplate beauty until it starts to show up as, in my mind, as what it is, and then I let those seeds fall into the form, into the matter. Yes? Okay. So that's what we're playing with. So we're going to break up here, and we're going to break up into groups. And I've got two questions for you to play with. The first one is, how am I currently using the creative process? Just pick something. And then secondly, how can I remember to be more conscious of my use of it? So move into little groups, circles, clump, gatherings. Linda, do you want to come back and join their circle? Okay. How am I using the creative process? How can I remember to be more conscious? Okay, let's come back together. So does anybody want to share anything out of their group? Any ahas? Kent.
Thank you. I want to touch on question number 2 on how can we remember to be more conscious in our use of the creative process, and two of the three things came up that really inspired me in this conversation, and the first one was as simple as community and coming back to a place like this where others outside of us can remind us. The other is mentorship and the examples that our teachers set for us. And the third being a practice, any kind of practice that we can just repeat and come back to and find some solace in that. So, and thank you guys for sharing that.
Thank you. Fritz. Oh. Yes.
First of all, we are both, Teresa and I, are trying to figure out how to use the creative process. We created each other. We created a story that neither one of us really like right now, so we're trying to learn the process.
Thank you. And I'm going to suggest that when we try to figure out, we're always using the creative process. So what we're trying to figure out is how to get past our mental blocks and what is it that's blocking the flow of the process. And that's where, as Ken said, having a mentor, having a practitioner, having somebody to support you, who is outside of you, has a view that you don't have and can see what you think is just normal, you know, and say, that's not quite the way it is. I remember a story I heard a long time ago about a woman who went to see a doctor, and the doctor said, well, describe your normal morning. And she goes, well, it's just like everybody else. I get up out of bed, I go to the bathroom, I throw up, I take a shower, and he says, wait a minute. She goes, doesn't everybody just throw up first thing in the morning? And it's like, no, they don't. But that was her normal. You know, and so we get caught up in what's my normal, and we don't realize there might be a different way. Yeah. Yeah. Anybody else want to share out of their group? Yes, Susan.
So we recognized a little bit laboriously that we're creating all the time, not necessarily getting the results that we would get if we were doing it on purpose intentionally. And so the question is, how do we remember to do it on purpose intentionally? The thing that came up for me was Post-it notes. Mm-hmm. And somebody in the group said, well, whatever it takes. Mm-hmm. But I could see actually, because I like Post-it notes, putting them all mm-hmm. over, mm-hmm. saying remember or intention or something, mm-hmm. something, because otherwise we go la-di-da and keep on creating, but not the thing that we are choosing.
Yes. Thank you. And I've actually known lots of people who, thank you, Susan. I've known lots of people, hang on one second, who, as they're on their journey, as they're early on their journey especially, have Post-it notes or some sort of thing all over their house just to remember. It's like, how do I change let me bring it back, let me bring my thinking back, let me bring my thinking back, and as a reminder. So you're not alone in doing that. Let me give you a...
I don't just use Post-it notes because they tend to lose their sticky and fall off. I use a Dynamo label maker, mm-hmm. and I put them where I can see them, like progress, not perfection.
Yes.
Even on my weakest day, I'm a little bit stronger.
Yes. Beautiful. Thank you, Tex. All right, so I invite you this week to become conscious as your spiritual practice of pay attention to how you're using this process. Check in with yourself. Just wait, how am I using that process right now? What am I thinking about? I heard somebody over here talk about they were worrying about something, an upcoming event, might be a ministerial graduation ceremony. But I don't want to name it. I don't want to point any fingers or name any names. But you know, when we worry, we're caught in the mental level of just recirculating, instead of stepping back and saying, what is the highest vision that wants to come through in this circumstance? And it takes us a moment because we all know that we're dang smart, right? Yeah? And so we should be able to figure it all out by ourselves. BS. That's belief system and you know what? Yeah. So we... So as a friend of mine said, if we were meant to be alone and figuring it out all by ourselves, there's enough planets around that we could have landed on just one of those planets and been by ourselves. But we got 8 billion friends to help us remember who we are, right? Some of them by encouraging us along the way in wonderful ways, some of them by encouraging us along the way in some very uncomfortable ways. But we're all here to remember that. So become conscious of how you're using the process this week. Notice the mental blocks and resulting emotional conflicts and clear them for a clear manifestation of the nature of spirit. And you get support from, this is why we pay the practitioners the big bucks that we pay them, right? And the ministers. You know, get some support. You know, I have, I just mentioned, a mentor and 3 different prayer partners, all of whom are either practitioners or ministers. You know, I work with that, you know, at least twice a week, sometimes 3 times a week, with making sure that I'm as clear as I can be, because this will come as a shock to you, because I'm your minister, and so I should be all perfectly clear and wonderful. But I get stuck sometimes. Usually every day. So get yourself some support for that. That's why we have these wonderful, well-trained practitioners. So that's your practice this week. Are we good for it? Yes. Pay attention. Clear the stuff that's in the way. Our affirmation, say this with me. I consciously align with the creative process of the universe and use it in my life to manifest good beyond my wildest dreams. One more time. Yes, I consciously align with the creative process of the universe and use it in my life to manifest good beyond my wildest dreams. And so I do, and so it is.